The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, well, hello everyone. I know we still have a few people logging in, but welcome to this month's capacity building webinar series. This month we're talking about getting some funding for all of your great affiliates. So funding for Minnesota Habitat affiliates and highlighting how Habitat for Humanity of Minnesota can help. So we're so glad that you have joined us today and excited to just get started. My slide doesn't want to move forward. There we go. So the 2013 Capacity Building Webinar Series, we started in January, but have been hosting a monthly web conference for our Habitat Minnesota affiliates. Oops. And typically the web conferences are the last Wednesday of each month due to summer schedules and vacations. We bumped this one up a little bit. Also, I think in keeping in mind some of the deadlines for the funding that we would be talking about, trying to get that to you a little bit sooner. But typically the last Wednesday of each month at this time. And next month we'll be focusing and looping back to talk some more about ABWK. But you can go back and listen to and view previous webinars on the recording, and today's webinar will be recorded as well. These are intended to be really a networking event, a networking web conference, and so the more that you ask questions and participate, the more you'll get out of it. And so we have a lot of information to share today, but really hoping to provide that opportunity for you to ask questions. It's always nice for your peers to hear the questions that you have. And so please share your own expertise, ask those questions, and just see this as a chance to interact with Habitat Minnesota staff, but also with each other. So right now, you are listening to, I am April Reardon, the Capacity Building Director here at Habitat Minnesota. But I want to make sure you know how to participate. Many of you have done these webinars with us in the past, or maybe have participated in others. So, but just to figure out how to participate and for us to learn a little bit about how you're planning to participate today, but this is what your control panel will look like. Right now, everyone is muted just for sound quality, and we like to control like some of that background noise. But you can, let me show you here. So if you see this little hand there, that's something that you can raise at any time, and I'll be monitoring that. And when I can interrupt and say, let's say Susan had her hand raised, and I can say, well, Susan has a question. And then if you are participating on the phone, or if you have a microphone either built into your computer or on a headset, then you could just talk to us, and you could talk live on the webinar and just ask your question or make your comment. Otherwise, down here, there's a question box that's part of your control panel, and you can type in comments and questions there. Those aren't automatically viewable by everyone on the webinar, but if we answer that question, or there are ways that I can share that. So if you want something to remain private, you should say that, but we might ask for comments, or there might be questions, and if it's okay, then there is a way that we can share those with everybody. And let's see. So the way that you know how you're participating through audio is to look at your audio settings here, and you can click telephone and dial in, or you can participate with a mic and speakers. Some of you might just be listening today, and you might not be able to type and participate in polls and do all of those things, but if it shows that you have a little microphone or a little green setting, it means that you have the ability to talk. So maybe you have a built-in microphone and you're not even aware of that. I think that happened to me once where I wasn't even sure that I had that built in. But I have a couple of polls that we want to launch for you just to tell us a little bit more about how you are planning to participate. So some questions about that, if you wouldn't mind answering those for us. So this would be just how are you planning to participate? Are you calling in on your phone and so you want to be able to talk and chat? Are you using a microphone or headset? Planning to just chat only. Maybe you've got several people listening in and you're just using your keyboard to type in your comments and questions, or if you're just listening only, just to let us know. And just about everybody has voted. I'll give it a little more time. It might be that you're figuring out the answer to this right now. Okay. So we've got a really good mix. So we do have some people who are able to talk with the phone, talk on the microphone. That's great. About half of you. That's wonderful. And then a good chunk will be able to chat only using their keyboard. And so just a quarter of you who are listening only. That's good. That should allow us to have a pretty interactive presentation. That's great. And so my other question for you, though, would be to help us keep track of attendance. So just to let us know if somebody else is participating with you. So how many attendees, including yourself, are participating with you today? You can only sign into the webinar once with an email address. And so if you have multiple people participating around one computer, or maybe you're projecting it up onto a screen, then if you could let us know that would be great. Oh, we've got everybody. Okay. All right, so nobody's got anybody with them today. That's helpful. Great. Thanks for responding to those.
This is Susan Thompson.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, April. I'm surprised there isn't more webinar parties going on out there, April, for
I
our
know.
exciting programming today.
Right. there have been more webinar type parties for other topics in the past, but maybe this one didn't lend itself to the party kind of setting. But you can also play the recording later and gather people around to view the recording. So maybe the parties are happening later. So our agenda today, we're going to do some introduce the presenters, which we've already heard from one, Susan, but we'll also introduce Kwame, and then really dig into what is the Habitat Minnesota Loan Fund and some of the frequently asked questions about that, and then looking at our grant programs, making sure everyone knows where to find additional information. And then questions is listed here, but really submit your questions at any time. If you have a burning question, feel free to enter that right now at any time throughout the webinar, and I'll keep an eye on those and just interrupt and find places where I can insert those questions. So without further ado, I'll turn this over and introduce Susan Thompson, our Loan and Grant Program Director, and Kwame Owusu Achampon. I think I did that right.
That is correct.
A program analyst. And so, as many of you know, Susan is just delightful to work with, one of my favorite people here, and it's been fun to put this together with her.
All right on that.
Oh, you really are? And Kwame started just a little bit before me, so we both are new to Habitat Minnesota, but I'll let Susan and Kwame tell you a little bit more about what their roles are with that program and kind of a little bit about how some of that changed with the addition of new staff.
Well, greetings, everyone. Over the last several years, Habitat Minnesota has grown its loan and grants programming. As most people that are on the call know, were here before we had some expanding programming. And while our programs have grown, now we finally had to add some staff to help administer the programs. I'm the director, Loan and Grant Program Director, Susan Thompson, And as April said, I've been with Habitat Minnesota for quite a bit longer than April or Kwame. I've been here 7 years. And in my current role, so this is my new, I guess, role, I will be managing the loan program and overseeing the grant programs, which include Federal Home Loan Bank and the Community Revitalization Fund. Kwame, why don't you share with what your kind of role is and say something about yourself?
Sure. As April mentioned, I started with Habitat Minnesota in November of last year. I took over the Federal Home Loan Bank programs for new construction and a brush of finance from Jenny. I also assist Susan with a CRV grant program and loan fund programs and report directly to her. My title, as stated, is Program Analyst.
Thanks, Kwame. Um, so between the two of us, it's our hope that we can efficiently distribute over $4 million in this coming fiscal year. Our goal today is, this is the first time we've tried to do this in a web conference. We've never done this before. So my idea was, our goal today is to summarize the resources available to Minnesota affiliates, highlight some of the primary components of qualifying for funding. We can't go through all of them. You would, if you don't already fall asleep, you would really fall asleep if we went through them all in detail. And most importantly, know who to contact for more information. We're happy to answer any questions today, or of course by phone. Kwame and I are available, or email, or in person. And for your information, all of the program requirements that we'll talk about today, the descriptions and the checklists, are on the Habitat Minnesota website. And before we're done today, April will help navigate you through the website so you can find those additional details. So we're going to get started with the loan program. For those of you who know me, you know that I appreciate any kind of humor. So if someone sends me a question with something humorous in it, it will make me happy. How's that? I know who's on the call, so. Does everyone know who's on the call, April? April?
Hi, sorry, I had myself muted so you wouldn't hear all my tapping in the
Oh,
background.
okay.
Yes, you should be able to see the attendee list. I enabled that
Okay.
for you. So, I mean, what you can also do is if you see somebody on the list that you want to chat with, you should be able to click on their name and then send them a question, I think.
Great.
Unless that's
Great.
just an organizer piece. I do have a hand raised from Nathan. I'm not sure if this is, if he wants to. I'm going to unmute you, Nathan, if you wanted to make a comment or ask a question right now.
That's because Nathan's picture's up on the screen.
I
He
know,
wants to
you're
talk
right.
about what he was wearing that day.
All right, Nathan, it looks like you have audio set up, but I'll give you a moment if there was. Well, Nathan, raise your hand again if you want to say something. Okay, I'm going to mute that again and carry on, Susan.
Okay, so we're going to start with the loan fund, and then the second half will be the grant programs. As a brief background, Habitat Minnesota Loan Fund was the founding program of Habitat Minnesota. When a group of affiliates got together back in 1997, I believe it was, they began to explore various funding sources, and the willing funders at the time replied but expressed an interest in dealing with only one entity instead of providing resources to each individual affiliate. So thus the loan fund was created, and actually that was the reason why Habitat Minnesota was created. So it's kind of the, what would you call it, the grandfather of our programs. The original funding was provided by Minnesota Housing, Greater Minnesota Housing Fund, and the Wells Fargo Foundation. The next phase of funding was the 21st Century Fund, which is noted on this Facebook page. Last spring, we closed our 200th loan under the program, and these funds were made available through an appropriation at the legislature when Jesse Ventura was governor. So for those of you who may think that Jesse didn't do much, he did a lot for us. And then next came the Next Thousand Homes Fund, which originally was a $10 million commitment from MHFA, which they've extended 3 times, and we'll make our 4th draw in September for a total of $18 million. And finally came the Green Mortgage Fund, which was funded 2 years ago with $750,000, and that came from the Community Development Financial Institution. So you ask, why would I want to access Habitat Minnesota loan funds? Or better yet, why, or at the same time, why do we even do this? And the first answer is always at Habitat Minnesota to help more families. So this loan program money is in place so that you can increase your building. The more specific answer is the difference between waiting 25 to 30 years for homeowner repayments to come in order to build another home, or leveraging that asset right now in order to accelerate the building program. Affiliates have also pledged loans to jumpstart a special project, such as land acquisition. You've got an opportunity with 5 lots to buy. They've used a pledge mortgage for that, or to get a restore started. Questions so far? All right, I'll just talk a little bit about how the loan program works. The affiliate actually borrows the money from Habitat Minnesota, and the mortgages are merely pledged to secure the funding. So the monthly payment to Habitat Minnesota is the equivalent of the homeowner payment. It's important to remember that it is a pledge, not a purchase of the collateral. The affiliate retains ownership of the mortgage, services the mortgage as usual. And if the pledge mortgage should default, the delinquent mortgage can be substituted by a performing mortgage. Sorry, I went through that a little fast.
Sorry, I'm trying to get Nathan set up.
Oh,
Here we go.
okay. So in order to access the loan funds, and I think how the money works will become evident when we go through the different loan pools. We have an annual application process. So for those of you new to the loan funds, we only do this once a year. You can draw the money throughout the year, but we make an annual allocation. And the request for applications just went out last week and are due on August 8th, which is a Thursday. So it's kind of a little different. I usually have them due on a Friday. My mother's birthday is the 9th. I won't be in the office, in case anyone cared. So, so between now, and you should have all received an email with the request for applications on June 14th. But of course, if you didn't, I can send it to you. And also, it's on our website. Major components of the loan application packet include, and these aren't necessarily in order, but maybe they are. First of all, your fiscal year 14 budget. So which means for you all that if you're going to apply for loan funds, you should have a fiscal year 14 budget in place before August 8th, if that rings familiar to anyone. I'm sure you all have your budgets all approved by your boards for June 30th, but just in case, that's the second deadline. And as part of that budget, we need an accompanying fund development plan, which would kind of support where your sources are coming from on your budget, and also a home production plan, which would support your construction costs on your budget. Probably the most important document we use here when we underwrite the loan is a fiscal year 14 cash flow projection, which projects your cash flow out on a monthly basis. So you need 12 months showing beginning cash, what you're getting in, what you're spending, and your ending cash. And for affiliates that haven't done this in the past, you know, I work with affiliates on practically a weekly basis, helping them to develop those cash flow projections. It's a great tool. You won't be doing it just for me. You would be doing it. It'll help you run the affiliate much better if you don't already do it. You need your June 30th financial statements. So given the deadline of August 8th, year-end statements sometimes take a little longer to prepare. So be aware that you need to be right on that. The application will not be complete unless we have the draft June 30th financial statements. And this is not your audit. I understand that the audit won't come in until much later. And the last primary component is I need a mortgage portfolio quality report, and the templates on the website and also in the email that will show the financial health of your homeowner mortgage portfolio, like who's delinquent, what the balances are, etc. Any questions? All right.
Not yet.
Go ahead.
No
Was there a
questions
question?
yet. Nope.
No, I'm sorry.
Just saying
Okay.
not yet.
Can I see that if there's questions? I'm sorry.
I'll let you know.
Would I see if there's a question?
You don't know if it's a question for you or just a technical question, so
Oh, okay.
I'll interrupt.
Okay, sounds good. So how do I qualify? There's funding criteria. Roughly, you know, generally there's 4 funding criteria, and then there's some requirements of the affiliate and your mortgage portfolio. So let me just expand on the funding criteria briefly. Broad allocation throughout the state is pretty much focused on the 21st Century Fund, the Jesse Ventura Fund. The 21st Century Fund was allocated through the legislature, and when they appropriated the loan pool, they required that we allocate the money broadly throughout the state. It was the intention was to have not all the money go to the Twin Cities, so that it was balanced, fairly balanced between Greater Minnesota and the Twin Cities. So we have to look at that when we are allocating 0% interest money. The second one is important. We will not fund any more than 50% of your budget with the loan fund money. We do not want the loan money to replace local fundraising. So we assume that if we're paying for 50% of your budget up to you're doing local fundraising or have other sources of income for the other 50%. The loan funding is meant to contribute to helping families through home production. The amount of your planned production for the year may influence the amount of loan funding allocated. So if you're building more homes, you'll get more loan money because you can pledge more mortgages, is the way it works. And last, Habitat Minnesota maintains a quarterly credit risk rating for all the affiliates, which we currently have a loan with. And if the credit risk rating is too high, the affiliate may not receive an allocation. And if anyone would like additional details on how the credit risk rating system works or how your affiliate is rated, I'd be happy to talk to you. In addition, there are several requirements of the affiliate and the mortgage portfolio. Leverage is the first one. The affiliate cannot pledge more than 50% of their performing mortgages. So for example, if you had 10 mortgages in your portfolio, let's say 2 were delinquent, so you've got 8 performing mortgages, you could pledge up to 4. And we do that both number and dollar amount. So if all those mortgages are small, obviously that number, how much you could pledge would be smaller. We can only take Minnesota mortgages, so I don't know if there's anyone on the call that's working in La Crosse or Fargo-Moorhead, but I think they are familiar with that rule. You need to remain in good standing with Habitat International, with the Attorney General, with the Secretary of State, with the IRS, and with us. And basically, you're in good standing with us if you're in good standing with all those other people. The income of the homeowner for the mortgage pledge cannot exceed 50% of the area median income, and it must be verified in writing. When we go through the loan and grant, when we go through the grant programs, we'll spend a little bit of time on income verification. So income verification applies to both our loan program and our grant programs, including FHLB, both the FHLB programs and the CRV program. And finally, the homeowner must have a good repayment history. Now let's review what the funding pools look like for fiscal year 14. We've got roughly 3.6 million, 1.4 million is at 0%, 2 million is at 3%, and the Green Mortgage Fund this year has $264,000 left in it, and it will be at 2.25. We are in the process of talking to MHFA to try to get the interest rate on the 3% money down slightly. So we will finally set that interest rate probably, I'm guessing the end of July, toward the end of July. Each program also has an origination fee associated with it, which is on the chart. So let's take an example of how these different loan funds work with their various terms. To illustrate the different terms, the example shows how each of the three funding pools work for homeowner mortgage with a principal balance of $85,000 and a monthly payment of $283. So this is the same mortgage that you're pledging for the three different pools. So let's start with 21st Century. Interest rate 0%, so the loan proceeds to you will be the exact same as the balance on the homeowner's loan. The loan term is 25 years. It's actually whatever the term of that homeowner's mortgage is, but I'm assuming based on these numbers that there's 25 years left on that mortgage. Monthly payment's $283. The fee is 8%, so $6,800. Then we'll go to the higher interest rate money, the next 1,000 homes money. So you've got the same $85,000 mortgage. You've got the interest rate at 3%. So therefore we have to discount that 85,000 by the 3%. And what that net cash proceeds then would be is 59,678. So to explain the discount in a different way, that payment of $283 is enough to repay 59,678 plus 3% interest for 25 years. And given the lower interest rate, the fee is also lower. We do increase that fee if you borrow the money after January 31st, so from February on, because we're paying interest on it. So that helps to cover our holding costs. And the last one is a Green Mortgage Fund, which works very similarly to the Next 1,000 Homes Fund. The interest rate is lower, so therefore you get a little bit more in net loan proceeds to the affiliate.
So one thing that I noticed, Susan, is so our webinar title says we have 4 million to distribute, and if you add up the three funds that we had, I don't know if I can go back to that, but it doesn't count. It gets to about 3.6 million. So how do we get to the 4 million?
Well, April, funny you should ask that. The other $400,000 is available in total through our three fiscal year 14 grant programs. So I think we'll spend the next chunk of time reviewing those three programs, their similarities and their differences.
And so, but maybe before we just move on, just to pause for a moment, just to see if anybody has questions about the loan fund or comments about that to be able to share. I know, Nathan, I think I'll try to unmute you now and see. There we go. All right, Nathan, you're on if you would have some comments about the
hello,
loan
everybody.
program.
You
Hello.
can hear me, I take it?
We can hear you, Nathan. Nathan's with North St. Louis County, the executive director at North St. Louis County. I think everybody on here might know that, but maybe not Pat, a new executive director.
Oh, great. Great to be on the call. And just wanted to share a little bit of a testimonial. We've been using the loan fund since about 2003, so over the last 10 years. You know, if you're new to the possibility of borrowing against your mortgage portfolio, I know that can be a little bit of an interesting discussion at your board. We certainly had some of those with our board as well back 10 years ago. But really, when you're looking at what the possibilities are, this allows you to leverage your mortgage, and Habitat Minnesota has quite a few guidelines in place that basically keeps you from overdoing it, where you would get into trouble as far as you know, being over borrowed and not having enough assets to really run your business. I like the little circle around me there. But basically, when we were building 2 to 3 homes a year, we were borrowing against one of them each year. So we'd build 2 or 3 homes, and then that next year we'd borrow against one. Now that we're building 4 to 5 homes, we're getting close to where we're building 5 to 6. We're borrowing against 2 homes each year, and sometimes 2, sometimes 3, depending on if we were able to build 6 or not. But so basically, we've kind of taken a look at if we're building 4, you could borrow against 2, or building 2, you could borrow against 1, kind of the deal. And then watching our mortgage portfolio as well to stay within the guidelines. To me, certainly, I think we've had the loan money has been about 30% of our budget, but it has really helped us build more homes over the last 10 years, providing that leverage to go through. Right now, I guess you could say our mortgage portfolio, the mortgage payments that we have coming in, we have the ability, that'd be about enough to build 1 home a year, and half of those payments approximately are paying on our loans. So basically, you know, we've been able to add to our production and increase our capacity, but still keep a healthy mortgage portfolio with assets that help the company run.
That's great. Thanks, Nathan. And Susan, we do have another question from Parker, and I'm going to try unmuting Parker since your hand is up. And then Parker, if you want, you can go ahead and ask your question. Or I'll ask it for you. So Parker asked, do the income limits apply to current income or income at the time the family was approved? Which I think we'll get into that a little bit more, but if you want to.
We will get into it, but it's at the time the family was approved. So if you're pledging a mortgage that was closed in 2010, we would go by the 2010 guidelines. They can't be over 50%.
Okay. I think that's it for questions right this second, but keep them coming, everybody, and we'll jump in and we'll answer those as we can.
Great. So Habitat Minnesota has 3 grant programs, and we thought of this webinar in order to reduce maybe some potential confusion about the different programs. And so in order to do that, we hope it will help that we put together this handy dandy chart. And obviously everything isn't on here, but we thought it would be, Kwame and I get a lot of questions about the differences, and of course there's all the acronyms, so hopefully this helps to clear it up just a little bit. I think April sent out a PDF of this in advance of the webinar, but you can also just follow along with the slide.
Right.
So
if you happen to be somebody who just signed up today, you didn't get it, but it was sent out yesterday along with along with the slides in case you wanted to print those. So I think we have a couple people who signed up just today, and you'll get a copy of this and the slides after the webinar today.
Great. So we've got the Community Revitalization Program, which we commonly refer to as CRV. And for fiscal year 14, we've got $300,000. The other two grant programs come from the Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines, and we refer to that as FHLB. And fiscal year 14 for new construction, we've got $297,000, which I believe is 26 units. And for fiscal year 14, oops, there's a little typo. We've got 150,800 for a Brush with Kindness projects. The oldest program is the Federal Home Loan Bank new construction program that was started almost about the same time as the loan program. So that's also one of our founding programs. Many of you will be familiar with it because it's been around so long. Then we were allowed to apply for community revitalization money, which comes from Minnesota Housing 6 years ago. We've gotten 6 rounds of funding for a total of $1.8 million. And we're just thrilled that they allowed us to apply for those funds a few years back. And then brand new is the Federal Home Loan Bank's funding of ABWK projects. So let's get started. First is, why would you want to access these funds? These funds, unlike the loan program, which is a relationship between the affiliate and Habitat Minnesota, actually can pay for cash construction costs on a project. So this can offset your cash costs of your programming, whether it's home construction or ABWK. Each program has slightly different terms. For the CRV, it's a 0% interest deferred mortgage that's placed on the homeowner's property, and it's forgivable not until the 30-year anniversary. So no forgiveness in between the closing date, but it is forgiven if they stay there 30 years. Those awards range from 10 to 15,000 per unit, and I'll get to how that is figured out. Both FHLB programs are secured with a 5-year deed restriction, and that is forgiven monthly over 5 years, so 1/60th a month. For the FHLB new construction, it's always 9,000 per unit. You either get it or you don't. And for ABWK, it's really new to us, so I ask everyone to bear with us on the ABWK program. It's an average of $5,800 per unit. What that allows us to do, hopefully, is to fund some, $3,000 projects and some $12,000 projects so that we can scoop up, and I'm using a Brush with Kindness a little liberally here. It can also be used for quote-unquote critical home repair, but that would be the range of project that we would potentially fund through with the FHLB money. Do you have to pay the money back? Is it really a grant? Is it really a grant, Susan? You do have to pay it back if the home is sold or defaults before the maturity date. The money for CRV would come back to Habitat Minnesota and would be used for another Habitat home, so it's more or less a revolving pool. If the home were to default and there wasn't any money left after the proceeds, let's say it was sold as a third to a third party through a foreclosure and there wasn't enough to cover your first mortgage, then the obligation would go away. And that's the same with FHLB. It's just the term is a little shorter, so you only have 5 years. The maturity date is 5 years instead of 30. Each program is a little different on can I get the funding. For CRV this year, for the $300,000 that we have to spend, 16 affiliates have been allocated CRV money. That there are 24 eligible affiliates. 8 of those affiliates have told us they're not building, or they don't want the money, or the families that they're building for don't meet the requirements of CRV. FHLB new construction is on a first come, first served basis. And I'm pretty sure with the 297, we'll have money throughout fiscal year 14. And that's what, you know, is most widely. There is no pilot affiliates. There's no specific affiliates that qualify for that. Everyone in the state of Minnesota can qualify. And the last one is the ABWK FHLB. We have 8 pilot affiliates. They know who they are. But if you're not a pilot affiliate and you're actively doing ABWK, we can ask Federal Home Loan Bank if you can participate in this round. This was considered a pilot, and we have submitted a grant for next year, which will open it up to all affiliates, just like the new construction program. How do you get started? At Habitat Minnesota, we've worked really hard, especially this year because there's these different programs, to have a detailed program checklist for each of the 3 grant programs. So before you even start your home or your Brush with Kindness project, we encourage you to view the checklist so that you will know everything that you will eventually need to qualify for the funding. Each checklist refers to all the necessary forms and templates, such as the calculation of income worksheet, exhibits to detail construction costs, the proper deed restriction, privacy notice, and any other documentation that you might need a template or need to send in to us. And all 3 programs require the project to be pre-qualified. This is really important. So if you're thinking about building 2 weeks prior to closing the homeowner loan, you need to contact us with the pre-qualifying information, which is on the checklist, and we'll also go through it. And for FHLB ABWK, the process should begin 2 weeks prior to starting the ABWK project. So that 2-week window for the new construction programs, CRV and FHLB, starts happening 2 weeks prior to the homeowner closing. So the work is done. For ABWK, it needs to happen prior to the work being done. So now we're going to highlight just a couple of the components, and there's no way I can go through the details on the webinar, but we wanted to point out a couple components that seem to be either most important or most difficult for the affiliates. So the first one is pre-qualifying the project is to detail the construction costs. So on the screen on the left is Exhibit A, which will be familiar to anyone who's received FHLB or CRV funding in the last few years. It seems to throw everyone kind of for a loop, but all you need to do is take your construction costs off your QuickBooks report and just plug it into those different categories, and then we ask some other information in those blue boxes. For ABWK, it's a little bit different. We expect the Exhibit C, which is shown here, which is actually a 3-page document, in advance, and then when the project is completed, we need an Exhibit D, which includes the construction cost documentation and like a post-completion summary worksheet after the project is finished. So again, there's a little difference when you pre-qualify for the new construction. You will have your final construction costs. When you pre-qualify on ABWK, you will have what you're planning to spend. All 3 programs will require that the various exhibits be accompanied by a detailed accounting from your affiliate's accounting system or other spreadsheet that shows where the money went. Upon review of those construction costs, sponsorship levels, the first mortgage amount, and for new construction, the appraisal and the first mortgage amount, we can determine the amount of grant or grants the project can qualify for. For the new construction, there is a possibility that you can qualify for both FHLB and CRV. The second component of pre-qualifying is to verify that the homeowner's household income is within the 50% area median according to the income limits for each program, which are different. In the case of both FHLB programs, the limit is set by either the state MRB limits, which is mortgage revenue bond limits, or the HUD income limits listed by county by HUD. For example, a family of 4 in Greater Minnesota could earn up to $42,490. Both of those income limit sheets can be found on our website. Then you'll notice to the right, in the case of the CRV program, there are no adjustments made for family size. So the CRV limits are static and are provided on the slide. And you'll probably notice that it's quite a bit lower for the same family of 4. It would be $37,000 for the rest of the state. In addition to the income limits on CRV, projects must be built with a family that has one of the characteristics listed there of an underserved population as defined by MHFA, which are household of color, Hispanic ethnicity, single head of household, or having a disabled household resident. So let's talk just quickly. I see do I have plenty of time? No, I'm okay. Talk about how to verify the income. Again, this calculation of income worksheet will probably look familiar to most of you on the call. And I just want to confirm that everything starts with the homeowner application, and the income should be verified in writing at the time of family selection. So to sort of get to Parker's question. In our experience, especially recently, we have found that it's much more difficult to wait to verify the income at the time of the closing. And some affiliates have run the risk that the project won't qualify for the grant because either they make too much income or they don't have the ability to gather the proper written verification at the time of the closing. So best practice, I can't say it enough, is to verify your family, your selected family's income in writing at the time that they're selected. Please remember we'll need verification of income for any household member over the age of 18. So if there's a grandparent living there or there's a child living there that's 20 years old and has an income, those all have to be counted into their household income, even if they're not going to be on the mortgage or the deed restriction. And in order to guide you on how to verify the income, on the slide we tried to list the primary sources that we usually see for Habitat homers and what is required for verification. So we're starting with wages, and this has changed a little bit over the past year. So what we are required to get for wages is a verification of employment from their employer, written, and we do have a standardized form that you can use if you don't already have one, or 2 consecutive months of pay stubs. In the past, we used to use tax returns. That is not an acceptable income verification. We do ask for a copy of their most recent tax return just to back up whatever is put on these other documents. For child support, you need the most recent 12 months verified by the county. We've also developed a standardized form that you could send to the county for them to verify child support and, you know, food stamps. We don't count food stamps, but if they get TAMF, you know, MFIP money in cash, or any other kind of cash benefit that they might get from the county, we have one form that you could send to the county. And for SSI or SSDI, we need a copy of the benefit letter from the Social Security Administration, and it needs to say, you know, who's receiving the benefit, a date, and the amount. So sometimes we get some part of that, just a sheet that says $400 a month, and we don't know which child it's for or when the benefit started. So
Is this, so this might be a new person question, but
yes,
just in really listening through this, is this, you know, sort of getting all this information? Is that one of the barriers or one of the reasons that might hold affiliates back from accessing this funding? Or maybe to the affiliates who are listening, maybe it's not as challenging as it seems to me. It seems like a lot of information.
It's what it's what the process should do. It's what affiliates should do. There is the extra calculation of income worksheet that needs to be filled out for our programs. But what I have heard from most affiliates that are doing a lot of it is that is a really good way to determine their income and make sure, because from Habitat International standpoint, they can only go up to 60% AMI. So, and that needs to be verified. So I think it's required. It's certainly a best practice to put it all in one place, and it's a best practice to do it at the time that they're selected, so you just don't have to worry about it anymore. I mean, people's income changes, their household makeup changes, so if you can do it at the time that it was selection, it saves us. So I think all the affiliates in the call put it together. I think Kwame and I do quite a bit of work helping them or redoing it. So it's for us partly that this can be done maybe in a little more timely fashion, as in when the family select. That answer it?
Sure.
Nathan, as long as Nathan signed up for audio, he could probably comment on how he feels about the calculation of income worksheet.
I'm going to unmute him and see if he's got something to say.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
You know, the best thing I could say about this call and the loan program and these grant programs is that you get to deal with Susan and Kwame. And they really do help you walk through this process. And I would say, yes, the calculation of income worksheet is one of the most challenging pieces. You got plenty of time to work on that ahead of time. If you're like me, sometimes you're still finding, we need this letter from your employer. I need your tax return, a week or two before closing. But so far, I've been able to gather all the documents from our families needed, so it hasn't kept us from doing it. But basically, I think it's just good practice to try to get all of this by the time you have them selected, or very soon after that, and have them sign this paperwork so you can get it done.
Great, thanks, Nathan.
There's one other item that's unique to Federal Home Loan Bank funding. I think it's for both, but especially for the ABWK program, the affiliate needs to offer the homeowner training. So Kwame, I know for new construction you all do homeowner training, so it's not really as much of an issue, but you do have to offer training for the ABWK program. And Kwame, I'm wondering if you can describe what's required.
I have to unmute him real quick. Here we go. There you go, Kwame.
Okay. So for the Brush Your Kindness, applications are awarded points for projects that provide at least 2 empowerment services to partner families. And the trainings include sweat equity, partner family involvement and decision making. That could be, for example, affiliates working with partner families to determine work that needs to be completed, determining costs, deciding on color of the siding, shingles, and things like that. And finally, homeownership, financial education.
And they have to sign something that both the homeowner has to sign and the affiliate has to sign that they've been offered these trainings.
That is correct, yes.
Great. All right, well, last but not least, you've gone through all this paperwork now, pre-qualifying, final qualifying, and what you really want to know is, when do I get my money? So it's important to know with the grant funding that it is all provided after the project's complete. And process time varies for each of the programs. Once all the documentation is received, which is all the pre-qual information and then the post-closing information, which include recorded documents such as the mortgage and the deed restriction, the process takes, for CRV, we actually approve that in-house. So we have the money in our checking account. So upon receipt of all of the documentation, it just takes us maybe allow up to a week for a check, but usually it's, you know, a day or two after we get everything complete, and we'll mail you a check. It'll come from us. For the FHLB new construction and for ABWK, in both cases, Habitat Minnesota has to submit the files to the Federal Home Loan Bank in batches. So we try to have at least 4 in a batch. So depending on how many closings happen that month or 2-month period, that will take potentially a little time depending on when you complete the packet. Once we send it to Federal Home Loan Bank, they will sample a file, which means they'll have more questions, and we have to send in additional paperwork on one file. So if that file's okay, then we're good. Then they send the money down to Bremer Bank in Wilmer. So all of that, if you don't hit the batch right, if you have to wait a few weeks to get into the batch, and then FHLB approving and Wilmer sending out the checks, it could take up to 8 weeks, which I'm sure there's a few people on the call that can confirm that. ABWK is the same except for the Bremer Bank in Minneapolis gets the money and it goes into our account so we can write those checks, so we don't have to wait for another bank to write the checks. And you know, just we'll keep you posted on where we're at. It's just that know that there's a little bit of time between the end of your project and getting the checks. And finally, each program charges the fee equal to 7.5% of the grant amount, which on the Federal Home Loan Bank new construction is always $675 because that's the amount of the grant. But the other 2 grant programs vary a little bit, so we just charge a 7.5% interest fee.
So now, and very timely, I tried to share that comment, but Marie pointed out that on the FHLB page, which will just go directly there, that there's a link for Exhibit B, homeowner and property data form that seems to be broken. So she's got a page cannot be found error. So it's nice then everybody can know that. There's been a lot of updating.
Yes, so thanks, Marie. We've worked really hard to get every checklist in order and all the documents, so I'm sorry I missed that link. So it's Exhibit B. What did you say, April? I'm making a note right now.
Exhibit B, homeowner and property data form. So we'll
from the Federal Home Loan Bank.
So we'll go right to the website and show that now, just to make sure everybody knows where to find that. But if you download the slides later, then this link will be live right here that you can just click on to go there. One of the tricky things about it, and it's just a limitation of the way our website is built right now, and so it's part of a longer strategic plan, maybe updated, but if you're looking for the CRV grant information, this yellow circle here, you know, and I'm just going to go to the website and show that then. But so here we are, almost there. This just takes a moment to kind of pop out of there. Okay. So here we are. So if you were at the Habitat Minnesota webpage, then here's this drop down. This is where we are right now, the Habitat Minnesota Loan Fund. You know, and so in that drop down, you don't see anything about the CRV program. Just know that that's under the Habitat Minnesota Loan Fund right here. So I'm trying to plug that in, and then if we click on that, you get to Community Revitalization Program. And so that's where, if we scroll down here, you're not quite there, we go. You start to find the checklists, all of this information, and then again, here's moving there for you. all the application materials then right in here. So it looks like this Exhibit B. Let's just see if this one is working out okay. Okay, looks like that one's all right. I'm going to go back up and we'll just take a peek at that Federal Home Loan Bank page then as well. But so then you can just go directly. The Federal Home Loan Bank has its own page, but the construction checklists are available in, or new construction checklists are available in different places. But all the information that Susan and Kwame have shared during this webinar are also there. So here's the one that we think is broken. Yep.
And both the new construction and the ABWK are on the FHLB site. Oh,
yep. This is that one that's broken. Yep. I was just double checking to make sure. Yeah, so here's the owner occupied rehab further down here then, if you just keep scrolling down. Thanks for pointing that out, Marie. And
well, I hope this was helpful for everyone. You know, we've got some new EDs on the call that probably thought we were talking craziness when we started talking FHLB and CRV and HFH-MN. And at the OLI conference, I know Pam was there and she's like, what's that? So hopefully this was a way to introduce everyone to this year's funding.
what I could do, we've got quite a few people on here, but not so many that if we wanted to, if anybody had questions or if we want to just unmute, I can unmute everybody on the call if you want to chat. Sure. Or if you have any other comments, I might just go ahead and end the recording, but we can leave the webinar on in case people have questions that they don't want to ask everybody or if they have comments to make. But you will have a survey it'll actually be built into the post webinar email that goes out to you. So you'll get just a really short survey to let us know if this was helpful for you. And again, thank you to Susan and Kwame for taking the time. It's a busy time. It's always a busy time, and for putting this together, and for all of you right in the heart of construction season to take the time to listen in and participate. The recording will be available to you yet this afternoon, and so I know lots more folks will take advantage of that as well. Any final words for the recording to live on and